Alternative Reality, Volume 1, Chapter 4, Dark Forest, a level 2450 zone, with various dungeons scattered here and there to explore. Some discovered, some not. A peculiar choice for a single level 21 apprentice mage. Some might even say, a stupid choice. But let them talk, is what Whale would say. He felt confident. That wolf he managed to kill before the unfortunate encounter with a patrolling onion soldier was around level 28. If he could successfully manage to deal with a level difference that big, well, successful in relative terms, Whale felt like he could tackle this zone as well. That is, if he could avoid larger groups of enemies. That and unfortunate forest fires. One can never be too careful with fire. On his way there, Whale didn't miss a single opportunity to thoroughly incinerate every moving thing he came in contact with, which was mostly living creatures. He needed the experience, okay? Time was money, and there was no time or room for sentimentality or some misguided morality. People should be happy he at least spared the fields of grass and the occasional flower. Although, that probably wouldn't have been the case if they gave experience points. Eventually, however, after his genuine effort, a system message popped up. You have leveled up. +6 unspent attribute points. +1 mana regeneration. And +20 mana due to constant use of mana-consuming skills. Skill proficiencies increased. Whale also checked how his favorite skill proficiencies were doing. Fire Mastery, Novice level 7. Increases the base and critical damage of fire-based spells. Reduces the mana cost of fire-based spells. Currently, damage increased by 13%. Mana cost reduced by 5%. And his signature spell. Fireball, Novice level 8. The most basic fire-based spell, conjures a fireball, can be managed in any way decided upon by the wielder. Can set on fire and cause damage over time. The overtime effect causes damage according to set circumstances. Base fire damage, from 46 to 67 damage. Base overtime fire damage, 5 damage per second. Mana cost, 14.55 mana per use. Casting time, 1.92 seconds. Currently, damage increased by 3% due to wisdom. Mana consumption reduced by 3% due to wisdom. Casting time reduced by 4% due to intellect. His main proficiencies were leveling up quite nicely, though that's only because Whale chose to level up only one magic school, Fire. And as if that wasn't enough, just one skill at that school, out of a myriad of choices. That way he was able to level up his proficiencies quite fast, which in turn made leveling much easier, although somewhat tedious and bland. Who said that putting all your eggs in a single basket was a wrong approach? The truth of the matter though, not much choice was given, since the only skill he managed to acquire was Fireball. Tomes were quite a pricey commodity, and Whale simply couldn't afford them. Not to mention that vendors that sold such valuable commodities weren't exactly in high supply, all the way over here on the edge of civilization. He was already lucky enough to get anything at all, because the alternative would have been to become the only melee combat magician in existence. Trying to stave off some bloodthirsty monsters with nothing but some ragged robes and a wooden stick did not seem too appealing to Whale. Going back to the matter at hand, availability was only one barrier of entry. After getting through that, you ran into the next headache, pricing. The most basic spellbook costs around 80 silver coins. Whale just barely managed to collect 3 gold coins after spending hours upon hours setting those weaker than him on fire. He was not about to spend almost 1/3 of his measly fortune for a basic spell, let alone one that he deemed weaker than what he already had. The issue with mages in different magic schools was that You couldn't learn intermediate spells without having intermediate mastery of the magic school. Since he didn't level up water mastery, he could only learn Ice Bolt, the simplest water-based spell. Without the ability to conjure up both spells at the same time, or dual casting as it was called, learning and using an even weaker spell than Fireball made no sense to Whale at all. Heck, even if he could use both at the same time, why wouldn't he just use it to conjure up 2 Fireballs at the same time, instead of diluting his damage output with something weaker? Ridiculous. Of course, there were more novice spells he could choose from, but most of them were hard to come by. He only read about those on the internet during his rest hours. Yes, even Whale needed to take a break from the game every now and again. Shame on you for thinking that he had absolutely no life outside the game at all. Anyway, the other types were even more overpriced, even if he did manage to somehow find them for sale. Thus, Whale just didn't bother. He was stubborn, remember? Whale trusted his fate. Even though life has always been hard on him, eventually he'd persevere. Eventually. Somehow. Was it baseless? Sure. Delusional? Probably. But when he set his mind on something, Whale only stopped when he crashed headfirst into an immovable wall. We just need to see how long this sprint of his lasts. You have gained 8% experience. With a smirk, Whale watched another wolf burn to ash before his eyes. His title gave a very pleasing increase in experience gained when killing higher level monsters, and even though it reduced the damage done against them as a counterbalance, the trade-off seemed well worth it. Not to mention that Whale was pretty sure his skill proficiencies rose a bit quicker when dealing with more challenging enemies. Thus, in the end, everything worked out for the better. And boy was Whale enjoying himself, jumping from one mob to the other, purging the dark forest of life, creating light where there was once only darkness, tripping over roots, barely managing to put out the burning grass. The spot had its ups and downs. -1 reputation. Every now and again, Whale's sadistic tendencies gave negative results. It seemed like the game had a base set of morals. Morals that were brought down like an iron hammer upon the inhabitants of this world, though it felt like it mainly happened to Whale. After all, he never heard of anyone complain about it, in or out of alternative reality. Though, considering his non-existent social circle in both realities, it didn't serve as much of an argument to prove anything. He'd have to put a pin in this particular mystery, until further notice. Besides, Whale was too busy murdering wildlife for that Sherlock Holmes type of stuff. For 8 straight hours, with little break in between, he went at it with a fervor, grinning like a lunatic and having fun all the while. But even kids need to rest after playing, every now and again, for a minute or two. Here, Whale was no exception. Huffing and puffing, after a day of hard fun, he prepared a bonfire and sat down in front of it. Might not be the smartest thing to do while being alone in a dark forest. Dark as in, the brightest thing in the immediate vicinity was that exact bonfire. Might draw in unwelcome visitors. Clearly, Whale had a way with not learning from poor past experiences. That, or he simply did not care, so engrossed in looking through the progress made he was. After hunting for so long, he gained a chunk of negative reputation and 10 whole levels. That's right, Whale was now level 31, and he only spent 2 real-time hours on it. Virtual reality had a way with time. Inside, it sped up 4 times. Might have had something to do with how the brain managed to process insane amount of information in a relatively short time, which the game system depended on. Or so Whale speculated. Some say this kind of brain abuse might bring on some side effects, but after a year of use, none were recorded. Though the Illuminati fanatics say it's all a big scheme, and the unfortunate victims were simply spirited away by the company, never to be heard of again. Whale didn't care much either way. First of all, he didn't have much to lose. Second of all, He was pretty sure that no one would even bother with him, even if something did happen. Not like there were people out there brave enough to endure his looks for long enough to have a coherent conversation. Eyes set upon the dancing flames in the fire pit, Whale's mind slowly drifted back to his character development and what his next steps should be, which took him a whole 5 seconds before he simply decided it was about time to move deeper into the forest in search of dungeons and the like. If he's lucky, maybe he'll find an undiscovered one and claim its unknowable fortunes to himself. Undiscovered dungeons gave their own set of bonuses to their first visitors, double experience for a week, and greatly increased the chance for quality loot. What's not to like? Those 2 bonuses made undiscovered dungeons the best damn thing to every individual crazed about leveling, which was why, in densely populated regions, most dungeons were already discovered. Yet, Whale started on one that did not seem as popular, or well known, judging by how many players he encountered. Maybe it had something to do with being on the very outskirts of the Onion Kingdom. Who knows? On the fringes of civilization, with barely developed infrastructure, sparse population, and poor security, miles away from any center of even moderate activity. One could only hope that the odds were in his favor. Well, at least he hoped they were. Thus, to triangulate the location of a potentially undiscovered dungeon, he used the best compass he could think of: the sparsity of people. So far, in this dark forest, he barely met a living soul. Though there was always the chance that his looks scared them off before he could even notice any. You'd think that someone would mistake him for a killable monster by now, but it seems like Whale was quite lucky, at least in that aspect. Satisfied with his reasoning, and with the bonfire's warmth to comfort him, Whale decided to reward his brain with some nutrition for a job well done, and took out a loaf of stale bread, only chowed down on it without a moment wasted. It was of absolutely horrid taste, judging by how the magician's face twisted up with each taken bite. So bland and hard to chew that it might as well have been cardboard. Whale would know. He tried it when he was little, just to feed his curiosity. Feed, get it? Whatever. It was cheap though, 2 coppers per loaf. That much Whale could afford without a single pang in his Scrooge-like heart. He could chew away peacefully, the sounds of money lost too distant, too faint to haunt him after each shift of the jaw. Half through the loaf, Whale noticed a sudden rustling in the bushes around him, from which 5 humanoid forms suddenly leapt out, sooner than he could even react. Ragged outfits, rusted weapons, unwelcoming facial expressions and mean stares. Your standard low-level bandits. You'd think that Whale would react somehow, flail about in panic, scream in fear or something, instead of gaping mid-chew like a simpleton. Many would, after all. Though the rare few, those who actually used their damn heads, would have had their peace, since they wouldn't have been stupid enough to light a fire in the middle of a dark forest in the first place. Alone, in a high-level zone for Pete's sake. But what's the point in complaining about spilled milk? Oh, Whale, pleasure seeing you here in our neck of the woods. Moving up in the world, eh? One of the bandits said, after noticing who was sitting by the bonfire, his grouchy expression quickly changing into one of intimacy and respect. Whale felt a sense of relief wash over him. Another one of his fears just proved itself. Negative reputation worked with the less savory dregs of society the same way positive did with honorable non-player characters. His efforts, even if unintentional, to gather it were finally paying off, since the bandits showed a completely different attitude towards him than the last time he encountered them. And quite the intense standoff it was, all over a few copper coins found on the ground. Poor people have it rough. It didn't end too well either. What a pleasant surprise! Come, friends, sit, have some bread, Whale replied with a magnanimous smile, worried that even that much might just scare them off. He welcomed the unexpected guest with open arms and even offered food, the cheapest food there was, but even this much was quite unlike him. The bandits sat down around the bonfire and happily accepted the hospitality, although one of them broke a tooth while savoring Well's gift. It was a close call, but luckily everyone just laughed it off. Once the mood was set, they started sharing adventure stories, mainly about robbing and harming those less fortunate. Kindred souls indeed. Your intimacy with the bandit group has increased, plus 50 relations with the local bandits. All that free bread finally paid off. If Whale couldn't increase his standings with the villagers, he could at least do so with the opposite side. Surely there would be some benefit to it, right? Alright, well, it's quite lucky that we just happened to meet you here. Mind helping us out with something? Bob, the same bandit who previously spoke, asked with a crooked smile, a glimmer in his eye. Whale couldn't have been more interested even if he tried, as he leaned over heavily at the sound of that.